Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
The sun was slowly but surely moving toward zenith. Evelyn felt the hot rays of the sun burning her lower back through the thin cotton fabric of her t-shirt, the skin on her arms and ankles turning crimson. The woman paused for a moment to assess the extent of her defeat. What she saw shocked the woman, and she didn't hold back from commenting. By evening there will be bubbles, and then the skin will go stocking slip. I just went out, and I'm already burned. Like most blondes, Evelyn was afraid of sunbathing. Miracle creams never helped her, so she tried to stay out of the sun on particularly hot days. But to pull out today under the heat, she was forced by her neighbor. To be exact, not Nancy herself, but unwillingness to face her on the plot. She was an elderly woman in the village, disliked by many for her quarrelsome nature. Evelyn also had a bitter experience with her, and now always carefully avoided the neighbor's house. Even to the store for groceries, the young woman took a circuitous route, so as not to inadvertently stumble upon an unpleasant grandmother. For the same reason had to work in the vegetable garden in haste, and the most inopportune time. The nasty neighbor would go out to work on the beds when it was cold, and when the sun began to blaze, she would run away to her ramshackle house. There were different rumors about Nancy's building in the village, sometimes even the most ridiculous, but the landlady always called her dwelling a homestead, which pleased the local jokers. Village humorists amused the people with various pearls, the heroine of which was Nancy. The old woman in her own way perceived not humane attitude of her fellow villagers to her person. Despite her advanced years, the grandmother with youthful enthusiasm took revenge on offenders. In her arsenal were different ways, but most of all the grandmother liked to write complaints with invented facts. Nancy would file a denunciation with a policeman. Do you think Ethan had it all worked out? Ethan who? Well, Tesla. My name may not be known yet, but who knows what will happen in 5 or 10 years? Trying to be calm, Evelyn interrupted the sweet dreams of her loser husband. John, you're as far away from Tesla as you are from the moon. You're a loser or a modern-day loser. Therefore, I'm going to stop subsidizing your ideas completely. And in simple terms, I'm not giving you another dime. So instead of doing this nonsense, you'd better think about your job. I can't keep you on my back forever. This reproach cut painfully on the male ego, and John's polished face immediately distorted with a grimace of hatred. You've decided to kick me around with reproaches. Have you forgotten the shit I pulled you out of? If I hadn't married you 8 years ago, you'd still be in the pigsty. I saved you from slave labor and poverty. Evelyn knew that John was about to blame her for all his failures, so to avoid making matters worse, she went out onto the porch in silence, but her raging husband couldn't stop. You shouldn't do that, Evelyn. You'll regret humiliating me, and you'll regret it more than once when I'm rich. It'll happen, and I'll pass you by. You'll beg me to forgive your callousness, but I won't even look in your direction. So that his expressive monologue would not be drowned in the void, the man also left the house after his wife. Evelyn, you're lost without me. Come to your senses, you wretch. Otherwise, you'll end up in a garbage dump. Noticing that his only listener was getting farther away from the house, John ran after her, but immediately fell into the trench he had dug more than a month ago. Evelyn laughed heartily. You see, John, this is a sign from above. I remember you promised to bring water into the house, then you promised to steward the house, and all your promises are in this hole. You just dug yourself. Evelyn could hear her husband swearing as he climbed out of the grassy trench. She had long since gotten used to his flamboyant performances. Several times she had tried to get away from the scandalized man, but always something stopped her. And in the whole world, she had no one more dear to her than John. Despite his quarrelsome character, her husband never raised a hand on her, and he was not in the dense raspberries behind the neighboring fence. A quiet rustling was heard, and after a while Nancy herself appeared. "Good day to you, Evelyn, and good day to you, Nancy." Evelyn regretted that she had not noticed her neighbor in time. Now she would have to listen to the old woman's ramblings for the sake of propriety, but it didn't bother Nancy much that her appearance was not greeted with joy. She shook off from her warm vest plant debris, bloody raspberries, all chipped away, and no one cares, all abandoned. Evelyn was surprised not only by the old woman's inappropriate attire, but also by the eagerness with which she waded through the thorny shrubbery. The woman would hardly have made such a sacrifice for the sake of mere curiosity. Her hunch was at once confirmed. Nancy fixed her handkerchief on her small head, which resembled an unripe pumpkin. "Evelyn, how good it is to see you! There's a matter at hand, and I can't do without you." "I'm listening to you very carefully, Nancy." The thin lips of the old woman smiled, and her voice had an ingratiating tone. Evelyn knew she was about to ask for something. In the 8 years she'd lived with John, she'd learned to be calm about the most unusual requests, but she could tell from the way her neighbor was taking a long time to gather her thoughts that her grandmother was going to make some special demands. Nancy coughed for reassurance. "I'll tell you what, dear neighbor, my grandson, and he's a well-known man in town and almost an oligarch, has decided to revitalize our village." Although Evelyn didn't understand what her grandmother was getting at yet, she supported this initiative in absentia. It was high time to change something in our village. Grandmother was glad to have the support, and my Benjamin, too, thinks it's the right time to renew the village. He wants to build a bunch of stores and a factory to make juice. But first his grandson plans to build himself a 2-story house with an underground garage and parking lot. He told me a lot of things, but I didn't get all the details over the phone. And I'm very happy for you and your grandson. But what do I have to do with his plans? Now, honey, I'll explain everything. Benjamin likes it very much, this very spot where my manor house stands. It's close to the river and a short walk to the store. Well, but what's it got to do with me? Nancy could not bear it, and her peaceful tone changed to an angry one. "What's not to understand? Our lots are right next to each other. Benjamin's house is to be built on the site of my estate. I've described everything to him in my will anyway. But my grandson wants to make a small park with a summer tent and fountains. He has 3 kids, and they need a separate place to play and have fun. Benjamin's other plans include Evelyn interrupting a pushy neighbor. "Thank you for sharing your favorite grandson's plans with me, but they don't interest me much. What do you want from me, Nancy?" The neighbor rolled her eyes in surprise. "Why do you pretend to be a silly fish, Evelyn? My grandson's got his sights set on your lot. What's not to understand? The house is registered to you, as far as I know. When Molly died, her mansion and the land passed into your hands? Am I wrong? What of it?" The old woman swung her hand like she was holding a saber. "All right, I can see it's no use talking to you. Benjamin will be here soon, but he'll talk differently. Don't threaten me with Nancy, and tell your Benjamin I'm not going to sell the house. Let him count on your inheritance." The old woman shook her dry fists even harder. "For your malicious character, Evelyn, God will not give you children." The old woman knew how to hurt her uncooperative neighbor. She had hit the sorest spot. Evelyn grabbed a dry twig lying on the floor and threw it at Nancy. "You old hag, go away." The log came down with a whistle somewhere in the bushes, but the young woman realized that she had hit exactly the target. Nancy from afar began to send threats. "I'll file a police report on you. You'll get jail time for self-harm." Evelyn no longer paid attention to the shouts of the old woman. She walked slowly towards the house, trying to answer the main question. "But why is all the misfortune dumped on my head?" At her appearance, John perked up. "Oh, is Evelyn mine? Tired? Do you want me to heat up dinner?" My husband acted as if there'd never been a quarrel this morning. He fussed to the kitchen, reporting on the work done. At first, I wanted to work in the garage, but then I thought I'd clean up the stain on the ceiling. Evelyn looked up. The problem spot was covered by a slanted piece of wallpaper of a completely different shade, but the husband was very pleased with his work. Wasn't that better? The woman was so tired from the noisy morning that she twisted her heart. "Yes, darling," almost imperceptible. The praise emboldened the man, and in his mind immediately activated a fantasy track. "Tomorrow I'll dig a trench, or I'll break my legs. It's unlikely we'll be able to bring water into the house this summer anyway. It's gonna take a lot of money. I will complete my project. I got a patent, and then you and I will live. We will go to the south." John noticed that his wife did not share his joy. "Evelyn, what's wrong? Is your back hurting again?" The woman often complained of lower back pain. Often she couldn't get out of bed for days. Then John treated her with ointments and even gave her injections himself, but now it was obvious that his wife was in a bad mood, not because of her back. "Just now, John, I had a fight with Nancy. The old witch has been ambushing me in her vegetable garden. What does she want?" Not her John, but her grandson. Briefly and in general terms, they want our lot in the house. John whistled in surprise, to which Evelyn immediately reacted sharply. "How many times have I told you not to whistle in the house? That's why we're always tight on money." "Oh, come on, all this superstition. Personally, I do not believe in any omens. You better tell me how much they're offering for our house." John looked at his wife with the look of a 5-year-old child who came to the toy store to choose something he liked. "By the way, I shared a desk with Benjamin for 3 years in junior high school. Then his parents moved to the capital. Our locals said that his dad had made it big, and that's the kind of guy who makes money. So it might be something to consider." Evelyn lowered herself gingerly into a chair. "John, are you serious? Or are you joking again?" "What jokes, Evelyn? We're being offered money, and that doesn't happen every day. Think of the prospects. I can finish my project, which in turn will get me a lucrative contract, and then—" "John, why are you always talking about yourself and your plans? This is my home, by the way, and maybe you should ask my opinion about it. And then have you thought about where we're gonna live if we sell the house?" The man looked at his wife with the same childish look. "I'm sorry, I didn't think about it. But we can rent an apartment or part of the house for a while." "All right, John, enough of this nonsense. I'm not selling the house to Benjamin or anyone else. You and your ideas are really going to make me homeless." John remained standing at a loss in the kitchen with a ladle in one hand. The man was trying to understand how he could refuse to accept money that was coming his way. Not a week after the unpleasant conversation with Nancy, the village was blessed with the arrival of Benjamin himself. The entire small population of the village poured out into the street to pay their respects to the iconic personage. Surprisingly, the scene resembled the arrival of royalty in Murom, depicted by the hand of a famous artist, only the place of the Russian empress was occupied by a successful businessman. Benjamin instantly caught the mood of the crowd. He smiled and bowed to the sides. There were, of course, those who looked at it with laughter, but most of them literally devoured their hope with their eyes. "I am glad to see you all, my fellow countrymen. I promise to do everything for the revival of our small homeland. For completeness of the picture, there was not enough candy or money, which by duty could scatter bodyguards. But for gifts, the local oligarch was apparently stingy. However, even without material support, the PR campaign was at a high level. Now everyone in the village was talking about Benjamin's arrival, and Nancy couldn't feel the ground beneath her feet with pride. John decided that he should take the opportunity too, and at dinner he said to his wife, as if by the way, "I think I ought to drop in on Benjamin. Maybe he'll remember a schoolmate." Evelyn suddenly supported her husband. "Come in. Maybe he'll at least offer you a job. If a man is planning to build, he'll need specialists. At least you'll be useful." "Of course, Evelyn, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not a builder. I have a completely different specialty." The man spoke with an obvious challenge, alluding to his engineering degree. But his moment of glory didn't last long, because his wife mercilessly killed the untimely flight of fancy. "Your specialty, John, is sitting on my neck, and I'm tired of it. And you must realize I'm not giving you any more money. You have to start earning your own bread sometime." Another scandal was coming. John had already taken in more air in his lungs to respond with dignity to his wife's perfidy. But at that moment there was a sudden knock at the door. The couple were very surprised to see that Mr. Benjamin himself came to visit them. The owner of the house began to make a fuss about the guest. "Welcome to our hearth. I didn't expect you to think of me, Benjamin, but it's a pleasure." The guest only nodded at the welcoming ritual, but paused. He sat down at the table, which Evelyn was promptly setting, and even drank the cup offered by his host, but that Benjamin traditionally made the first toast to the meeting. The men drank and reached for the pickles, which the hostess put on the table. "Help yourself, dear guest, my mistress makes great pickles." The businessman took another drink. "That's right, John. Only in our village women know how to pickle cucumbers." "Then let's have a drink, because it's uncomfortable to stand on one leg." "Don't think I'm not into this business, but I believe that ancestral traditions should be honored." "I'd agree, but don't pour me any more." "Hypertension. I don't want to die before my time. I've got a lot of work to do." Benjamin was an excellent speaker. He knew where to pause and where to raise the tone a little. Evelyn had briefly attended an art reading club at school, where they were taught how to speak properly. Now she watched the guest with undisguised interest, realizing that he did not appear to them for the sake of an old friendship with John. But the guest began from afar. "John, how many years has it been since you and I used to go trick-or-treating together at recess?" The landlord began to calculate in his mind. "Nearly 30. You left us right after 3rd grade." Benjamin sighed. "Yes, unfortunately, we can't know where life will take its next turn. I didn't think I would return to my home village one day either. But what amazes me the most is how small the world is. Why am I saying this? You're about to find out. Imagine when I shared my plan with my colleagues, there was a person in my team who also came from these places." The guest glared at Evelyn, but she calmly waited for the rest of the story. John was clearly puzzled by this turn of events. "Benjamin, why are you pulling the cat out of the bag? Just tell it like it is." "I didn't mean to offend you." "We're not offended, but let's get to the point, Benjamin. Who's that goose in your office who can't live without our village?" "I think we know who he is. It's Ethan." The plate slipped out of the hands of the surprised hostess. "Uncle Ethan, does he work for you?" I tell you, it's a small world. After all, the guest had achieved the desired effect and was now enjoying the result. "You see, dear Evelyn, I had a frank conversation with your uncle, during which it became clear that Ethan is very dissatisfied with his grandmother's death warrant. Not only that, but he considers the document invalid and even intends to contest it. Sensing an impending cloud, John intervened in the conversation. But it's impossible. You're wrong, friend. It is possible. After all, it hasn't even been a year since your grandmother died, has it? Or am I wrong, Evelyn? Evelyn felt her mouth go dry. What are you trying to say? My grandmother had her will drawn up and notarized while she was still alive. That's understandable, but you're not a direct heir. But Uncle Ethan refused, and now he's changed his mind. I suggest you reconsider. And remember, I only make a very good offer once and then. Oh, by the way, John, I'm planning to start construction before the fall, so I need reliable people. Can I offer you a job as an old friend? But I'm not a builder. I'm more of an iron worker. That's fine. Will you be foreman or forewoman? Agreed? John stretched out. Well, I'm always ready. Then come over tomorrow. I'm staying at my grandmother's, but it's only temporary. As soon as I get things settled, I'll be back in town. What about construction? That's why I'm looking for reliable people. People who can be trusted with serious business and money. As soon as the door closed behind the guest, John cursed. What a creep, that Uncle Ethan of yours. Evelyn said quietly. I didn't expect him to be so mean either. How much misery has he caused, Mom? He's taking it out on me, too. Evelyn's mother and grandmother had carefully avoided talking about her father when she was very young, and she hadn't been much interested in the matter either. But later she tried several times to find out where her father was and why he lived in another country. Uncle Ethan decided to enlighten her niece, Mother's own brother. One day at a family dinner he said, I think, Camille, it's time to tell the girl. Evelyn remembers well the mother's belittling look at her brother. Ethan, please don't. You know perfectly well that William is not to blame. Then who is? No, sweet sister. He left you with a 1-year-old child to go to your uncle's. He traded you and your daughter for money. Suddenly, the grandmother supported her son. Yes, that's exactly what happened. It's you, Camille, because of your blind love, did not finish the institute and could have made it in the people, if not for the early marriage. A 15-year-old girl was uncomfortable listening to her grandmother and uncle reproach her mom for loving her father so much. Evelyn decided to stand up for her mother. Is love a crime? The grandmother looked at her granddaughter. You're too young to reason. When you have children yourself, you'll know what it's like to raise them. I raised 2 of them on my own, worked 2 jobs, and kept piglets, and all for the sake of educating my children. Thank you that at least Ethan became a man, but Camille didn't appreciate my efforts. She fell in love. She got married in her 3rd year, and soon you were born. Grandma was ready to continue the story, but Mom shouted at her. Please do not fool the child's head. It was your efforts that made me a single mother. It was you, Mom, who then played a comedy with your illness when William came to fetch us. It was you who separated daughter and father. After this, the relatives began to shower at each other with reproaches. Evelyn was disgusted with them and ran away to a friend's house. And soon there was a misfortune with my mother. When she was feeding the pigs, and my grandmother had 8 of them, she was attacked by a wild boar. The woman screamed for a long time, but no one heard her. Only late in the evening, Grandma suddenly realized, Evelyn, where's Camille? I saw her come home from work, and then she disappeared. The girl found her mother unconscious. When the hospital x-rayed her, the doctors were shocked. Poor thing. She had multiple fractures, damaged internal organs. Mom was in the hospital for months. She had one operation after another, but she got weaker and weaker every day. Evelyn ran straight to the hospital after school and sat by her sick mother's bedside for hours. Lessons had to be done late at night. Grandmother visited her daughter only 3 times. I have no time to go to hospitals. If I don't feed them in time, they'll go to waste. And Evelyn, you'd be less likely to go there, just for 5 minutes, and that's enough. I can't do without a helper. One day, Evelyn couldn't stand the injustice. Grandma, aren't you ashamed? Mom is your own daughter, and you treat her as if she were your stepdaughter. But everything is for Uncle Ethan, and those pigs, and the damn boar that trampled on Mama. Everything is for him, too. The shocked Molly could not utter a word, and Evelyn cried and screamed with resentment. I heartily wish that boar would die. The old woman immediately came to her senses and slapped her granddaughter. I wish your tongue was dead. The boar weighs over 10 pounds. That evening, Evelyn did not come home to spend the night. She spent the night sitting next to her mother, whose condition had deteriorated sharply. The woman was falling into a restless sleep, then calling her. In the morning she asked, "Daughter, at home, in my album there are pictures where we are all together, you and me, and your dad. Don't believe it. He's a very good man. It's just that everything's worked out against us. If I get better, you and I will go to my dad. There's his address right to him." 2 days later, Mom died. Evelyn looked for the picture the dying woman had mentioned in the papers, but she couldn't find it. And then she forgot about that picture, because a completely different life began for her. Now all household chores fell on the fragile shoulders of a 16-year-old girl. After school, she would run home to feed the pigs and chickens. Then she had to weed the beds that stretched as far as the horizon. During summer vacations, when school friends and girlfriends went to the sea with their parents or vacationed in health camps, Evelyn did not unbend her back from morning till late in the evening. The list of her duties was enormous, and her grandmother made sure that every item was completed. Twice a year, Uncle Ethan came in from out of town. He would fill the car to the brim with groceries, and without hiding his pleasure, drive back. The hard labor took its toll on the girl's health. She was found to have a herniated spine, and later doctors discovered a problem in the female side. So John was right about one thing. He did spare her from slave labor when he proposed to become his wife. Molly took the news of her granddaughter's marriage in stride. She threw a tantrum. I'm everything to her, and she decided to throw me away. Ungrateful. The future son-in-law listened to these unfair claims and advised Molly to attract his son to hard labor. To the grandmother, this suggestion amounted to an insult, and she shoved John out the door. It was then that Evelyn first disobeyed her old grandmother and left home with her fiancé. At one time, they were staying with her husband's parents, where John's brother John and his family lived. About a year passed, and Molly showed up for a visit. The woman cried for a long time, complained about her fate, and then fell on her knees in front of her granddaughter and began to ask for her forgiveness. Forgive me, Evelyn. Forgive me for everything. Since you left me, I can't find a place for myself. Please come back. Live with me at my place. I've used up all the livestock. No, I don't have the health to take care of animals. It was unbearable to watch the humiliation of a native person, and the young people returned to Molly's house. Grandmother behaved quietly, tried not to interfere in the family affairs of her granddaughter. She was often ill, and Evelyn did not leave her bedside for 24 hours, just like when her mother was dying. Molly was very homesick, and she was even more worried about Uncle Ethan. Evelyn, you should call him. What's wrong? Why isn't he coming? He forgot his mother. The girl dialed her uncle's number many times, but he immediately referred to the lack of time. John sincerely felt sorry for the old woman. He heard these requests, but only Evelyn once in the heart said everything he thought about her uncle. "That's your Uncle Ethan, you bastard. When the old woman was dying, tending the cattle so that he and his children could eat, then he'd show up. And the helpless mother, he has no time to visit her." For 6 years, the son only once visited his mother, but stayed only an hour. Shortly after this visit, Molly and decided to redo the will in favor of her granddaughter. Shortly before her death, she gave her a photograph of her happy parents holding her in their arms. On the back of the photo was an address in English. "It's all my fault, Evelyn. I didn't want Camille to go abroad, and I separated her from William. He was a positive guy, he was already a candidate, and he was invited to work there. And then we came to get you, and I wouldn't let Camille go. But the worst part was that when he called once, I lied and said that Camille had married a good man." Evelyn listened to her grandmother's confession, but her anger was gone. She realized that nothing could be changed and forgave her grandmother. After her death, there was only one close person left in the whole world. Evelyn was afraid that one day he would betray her, but there is a belief that what one fears will happen one day. Just as Benjamin had promised, in August a big construction project was underway in the village. John enthusiastically took up the task assigned to him. From early in the morning until late at night, he was at the site he was entrusted with. With his wife, he rarely shared his work, answering her questions unambiguously. "Everything is normal. The work is going on. The salary drops into the account." But a month passed, then the second, but the promised salary was not brought to the house. He completely forgot about his super project and rarely visited the garage. As it turned out later, Evelyn had no idea what her husband had done with other people's money. It all came out of the blue. One day John came home earlier than usual, his face pale as chalk and his hands shaking. "Evelyn, I need money right away. Lots of money." The woman's heart sank in a premonition of bad things to come. "What's wrong?" That simple question sent her husband into a rage. For the first time in his life, he took a swing at her. "Why do you feign saintly naivete? I thought I told you in plain language that I need money, and it's urgent. Are you my wife or not?" Evelyn was silent. She was shivering, and her hands and feet were ice cold. At last she got over her excitement. "I too, John, asked you in plain language. What's wrong? I have a right to know. You're singing about your rights again. This is all your fault, sending me to work for that Ashole. You don't have enough money. I think you're the one who's been stealing it from me. What should I do this time? Help me. For the last time, let's sell the Dan house while that bastard's offer still stands. Can you explain to me properly why this is so urgent? All right, look. I just got screwed again, and I've decided to temporarily divert some of the money Benjamin gave me for materials to another project. What was it? There was a lucrative venture, and I thought I'd invest in it for a nice dividend, but it didn't work out. I ran into some crooks, and today, as luck would have it, Benjamin demanded all the invoices. That's the story." Evelyn didn't want to hear from the man anymore. She didn't care anymore. "All right, if we sell this house, or if Uncle Ethan sues us for it anyway, where do you think you're going to live?" That was a question John couldn't answer. Uncle Ethan showed up in the morning. "Well, weren't you expecting young people? I see that I've been on your heads like a snowball. But it's a good thing, because you can put all the dots on the inheritance question. Well, I filed a lawsuit to review this case, of course. I hired a good lawyer, so not to spoil the nerves of neither you nor myself, I suggest you move out of your parents' house. After all, anyway, then the bailiffs will put you out, and that the judges will decide the case in my favor. I do not doubt at all. I'm the son and Evelyn is the granddaughter. The law is on my side, and the fact that my mother made a will before she died, she wasn't in her right mind. I've got the certificate. In short, I'll give you 24 hours. Uncle Ethan left. Evelyn began to pack her things. John asked in surprise, "Where are you going?" "Wherever I want to go." "What about me? Don't you realize that Benjamin will roll me for money?" At that moment, the door opened wide and the autumn wind blew in. John looked at Benjamin with horror. "Wow, and we were just thinking about you and your wife, just like the proverb says. Think of something and it will appear." The joke turned out to be a bad one, and the next moment, John's body slammed into the opposite wall. Why, Benjamin? You know why. Ignoring Evelyn and John, who was in pain, the guest defiantly set the table in the center of the living room. "Well, are we going to joke again, or are we going to talk seriously?" "I'm talking to both of you. And to you, Evelyn, that goes for you too." "What's it got to do with me? He wasted your money, deal with him." "No, that wasn't the deal." "John, your husband? What's that supposed to mean?" "Because my guys are gonna cut him to ribbons. He's a big hit, but this time he won't make it between construction sites." "I need the money." John made it out of the corner. "Benjamin, honestly, I'll make it up to you. I'll work on your construction site for free for a year." "That's a good point, but it's not you, Ashole. It's your wife. And for you as a punishment, I have picked up another mission, and I don't think you will like it. But there are no other options if you want to live." John began to crawl on his knees in front of Benjamin. It was disgusting to watch this picture of humiliation. And Evelyn grabbed her suitcase, but the guest squeezed her hand, but the woman tried to break free. "Let go, you're hurting me." But Benjamin squeezed the vise even harder. Evelyn screamed, "Madam, it will hurt you even more if I entrust you to my boys. They like to work on women, so you'd better keep your head down." "Well, you're loaning your woman out." "I am, Benjamin. You can have her forever." Evelyn watched her husband tearfully crawl at the feet of his former classmate. She felt no pity for him, only contempt and disdain. Benjamin read all of this in the betrayed woman's gaze. He took her suitcase with one hand and led her to the exit. At the door, Evelyn turned around as if she were saying goodbye to her past life forever. "Come on, you don't want to disturb yourself with such an unpleasant sight." Benjamin pushed the woman lightly toward the exit. The door slammed shut, but outside they could hear John wailing at the top of his voice. "Evelyn, stay. I shall perish without you." The businessman spat contemptuously. "You wretch, it's you who will be doomed if you stay with this man. Forgive me for some inflection, but I'm really ready to tear John apart. He's been such a jerk to me. I don't know how to untie myself now." Benjamin's words sounded quite human, and Evelyn looked at him in surprise. "I don't understand. Do you really want me to be your slave?" "Yes and no." "Come, let's talk. I have a proposition for you. You can refuse, of course, but then I'll ask you to return all the money your husband has squandered. Anyway, he's still your husband, but you'll still take the house, won't you?" Benjamin nodded. "I will, and no one can stop me, as you have already realized. But the only problem is that the money the house is worth won't be enough to pay off the debt. Do you have any idea how much he cut me off? You see, on the one hand, I don't care about anyone who lives here. You're a smart woman, I think you know that, and I don't care about your idiot husband. The fact that I'll give him a chance is a big deal for you." Benjamin stopped in front of his car, opened the door for Evelyn. "You all believe in miracles here in the village. Miracles don't happen." In the city, they would have killed the whole family for that amount of money, and I'm talking to you. He put Evelyn in the car. They drove off. Evelyn felt her heart pounding. I want to tell you right away, Evelyn, if you think about running away, your John will be totally screwed. So a man's life depends on you. Evelyn understood now. So sorry, so sorry. And what should I do? Most importantly, for how long? How long, I haven't counted it yet. It all depends on your work. But what to do now you'll see. They drove to the edge of the village. There was no way to see it from the village, and now Evelyn was numb. It had changed completely in a matter of months. Huge greenhouses stood in rows, apples and pears were planted, and some other trees that were unfamiliar to Evelyn. A large wooden building stood a little to the side. Here, someone should be in charge of all this, not only to work, but also to make others work and to be responsible. Do you understand, Evelyn? Not really. But look, you'll do a good job, and everyone should do a good job, and I'll be there to watch. And if you don't do a good job, the debt won't go down. And if the debt doesn't go down, you'll have to work here for a long time. Only now Evelyn realized what a trap she'd fallen into. And John will work off the debt too, won't he? Benjamin laughed. No, Evelyn. Your husband's as useless as a goat's milk. Not only is he an idler, but he's also a thief. So you, and only you, will repay the debt. But that's not fair. Evelyn almost cried. Where have you seen justice in our world, Evelyn? Besides, you heard yourself that your husband gave you to me for debts. I'm going to the police. The woman grasped the doorknob with determination. Of course you will. I've got plenty of testimony about how you and your husband cleaned me out together. Believe me, for that amount of money, you two will go to jail for a long time. You're such scum. Benjamin laughed again. I have to agree with you there. If I wasn't trash, I'd be living, like you and John, in utter poverty and dung. Shall we go? I'll help you carry the suitcase. They came to a wooden building. There was no other word for it, as Evelyn realized she wasn't the first one here. A woman came out to them, looking more like a man. Well, what else did they bring? Is it any good, or is it just as inept as the others? Well, Wendy, that's what you're here for, to keep everyone working like a bee. Wendy laughed. You know I have a fly to collect honey. Benjamin turned around and walked to the car without saying goodbye. Evelyn caught up with him. Don't forget to count the debt, so I know how long I have to work here. I'll do that when I have time. Don't worry, you'll be working here for a long time. Still, I might want to pay you back in money. Benjamin looked at her like she was crazy and went on his way. As it turned out, there were already several unfortunates like Evelyn here. One was working off her husband's debt, who had recklessly wrecked Benjamin's car, and her husband was at home babysitting. They had 2 children. The second had racked up credit, and Benjamin had saved her. She thought he was a kind man and ended up here. In fact, they were all here voluntarily, well, or almost voluntarily, because if any of them left, quit their jobs, the problems would pour in like a cornucopia. Benjamin didn't keep anyone by force. You could go home, you could go home. True, Evelyn didn't have a home. She got out a week later, wanted to show John what her hands had become and spit in his face. But she came out and the house was gone. In place of the house, where her favorite roses had grown, construction was in full swing. Evelyn cried and turned back. Evelyn? She turned around. Standing next to her was Grandma Clara. She used to come to them often when her grandmother was alive. She used to swear at her grandmother, but she didn't take offense. They had been friends for a long time. Hello, Baba Clara. Evelyn sighed. I don't understand something. The house has been sold. There's no one here. I saw John leaving with his suitcases. Why aren't you with him? I'm not with him. I'm working. For Benjamin? They say he doesn't pay at all. He's trying to cheat, or are people lying? She waved her hand and cried, What are you, a girl? Tell me, what happened to you? I haven't seen you in 6 months, and already you've changed so much. Evelyn and Grandma Clara sat down on the grass, and Evelyn told her everything. She knew she couldn't help her, but she felt a little better. The old woman shook her head. I don't know who's the bigger bitch in this situation. You're John or Benjamin? But Benjamin is understandable. He grew up to be a bastard from a young age. But John, I'd kill him. It's all your fault, Evelyn. You should have sent him to work, not let him eat. Where have you seen that? A big forehead sitting on his grandmother's neck. Baba Clara spat and sat and thought, That's it, Evelyn. You should look for your father. Evelyn looked at Clara in amazement. And you know about him. Well, who doesn't know about him? But if you're younger, but William was a good guy. Molly, she's such a bastard. She looks like Benjamin. What's she been doing with this farm all her life? She's got herself a golden coffin or something. She couldn't let Camille go, not out of love, but because someone had to look after her farm. It can't be, Grandmother said. She just didn't want to part with us. Clara waved her hand. You can think what you like, of course, but I knew your grandmother much better than that. Never needed anyone for her but her Ethan. God damn it, every man is a piece of shit. Maybe we're in an abnormal zone here. Clara wondered. Evelyn smiled. Clara's grandmother had always loved everything unusual and otherworldly. Her daughter fought with her as much as she could. Twice they extinguished the house, because Clara lit candles from the evil power and forgot about them. All right, we managed. Once my daughter wanted to heat the stove. The frosts were fierce then. She opened the flap, and instead of a place to put firewood, there was a fresh brickwork. It's good that she didn't have time to grasp it. They broke it, and Clara too. She was making a hole in the world. Grandma was good at everything, but if something got into her head, the old lady never saw Evelyn again. She quickly got up, looked around, and authoritatively declared to herself, That's right, abnormal. We must save the world. She walked briskly into the village. Evelyn sighed. Yes, you'll have a hard time with her. Who knows when she'll get it into her head? When Evelyn returned, the neighbor was lying on her stomach, texting on her laptop. Lisa, listen, is it real, for example, in the same social networks to find a person abroad? Of course it's real. Why do you ask? Did you find a rich relative who is ready to pay for you? Oh, come on. I just wanted to try to find one. So let's try. I've talked to my folks. I've cried, so I'm free. How much longer? 2 months, and then I'm free if I don't get any more fines. Evelyn sighed. By her calculations, she'd be working here for almost a year, and that was if there were no fines, and fines came very quickly. She pulled out a picture, showed it to Lisa, who started typing something quickly. Look, there it is. Evelyn's palms were sweating. There's what? A man with that name. Evelyn, look, he's online. Lisa, don't speak in riddles? Well, he's online now. Come on, what should I write him? Nothing, are you crazy? No, what do you mean you don't text him? You meet him for something. Evelyn remembered John, remembered her home, her whole life, and gave up. At least it's an outlet. Write hello, William. This is Evelyn, Camille's daughter. Lisa chuckled. You're like a letter from the front. Lisa, I'll be quiet, I'll be quiet. Oh, look, I read it. Aye, She hasn't said a word yet. Probably won't answer. Evelyn lay down and was just about to doze off when Lisa pushed her. He did. That's a hell of a thing to say. Well, read it, and I'm going to go have a smoke so I don't get in the way. Evelyn looked at Lisa gratefully and sat down in front of the laptop. She read the words, wiped her tears, reread again. Lisa returned and saw Evelyn all in tears. She sighed. That's what, Mother. The laptop is on your bed, and I need to sleep. I don't want to get it tomorrow. Don't stay up too long. You have to work tomorrow, too. William apologized for not convincing Camille to go against Molly's wishes, for being resentful and not letting on for years. Then work got in the way, one thing and another. When he woke up, he decided he didn't need him anymore. Camille's been married a long time, and the daughter probably calls that man Daddy. Mom had never been married, not even one day. William was silent for a while. Evelyn thought he would never answer again. I had the thought, but then I decided that no matter how cruel Molly was, she wouldn't lie like that. So she did. Do you have a wife, kids? Evelyn, you don't have to tell me. I have no one. I tried to get married. I lasted 6 months twice, but I called my wives, Camille. And then I stopped trying. And God didn't give me children. I mean, He did, but I lost them. But it's not your fault, is it? Another long pause. It's my fault. It's always the man's fault, because he should be stronger, wiser, smarter, you know? It's all my fault. And now I'm dying. I don't have much time left, and I was still afraid to write to you. Dying? Why? There's Evelyn, a disease that doesn't look at places or people. It just goes and takes whoever it wants with it. Of course, Evelyn knew everything. She felt tears running down her cheeks. It was so hurtful, so painful to realize that she had just found her father and wouldn't even get to see him. Evelyn, why don't we video call tomorrow? Oh, I don't know how to do that. If Lisa says it's okay, she'll help you. So that's not you in the picture. No, of course I'll ask her. See you tomorrow. Evelyn has been getting reprimands all day. She got so many fines that Lisa couldn't take it anymore. She was waiting in the greenhouse next to Evelyn. What's wrong with you today? Lisa, you see, that man you found yesterday, he's my father. And Evelyn briefly told her the story of her family. Lisa exhaled. Wow, I'm sorry. Your family is a mess. Evelyn, so maybe he's rich? Evelyn stared at her with an uncomprehending stare. Even if he is, which I doubt, so what? So what? He could just pay off that creep, and you'd be free. Oh, Lisa, you say that too. A man dies and I have to ask for money? We've never met. What's the big deal? You're so interesting, you're used by everyone, and you can't. I won't. If you'll let me, we'd like to talk on the video conference today. Oh, you're such an idiot. Tell me, of course. What do you want me to do? As soon as my father saw her, he cried, God, you look just like Camille. How is she? Mom's dead. Dead? And Grandma? She's gone too. They talked for almost an hour. Then they said goodbye. They're putting me in the hospital tomorrow. They won't let me die in peace. And then I'll write to you again. All right, I'll be waiting. When a crying Evelyn returned the laptop, and Lisa asked, So did you tell him about your life? No, why? You should see him, he's so sick. Oh, Evelyn, oh, stupid. Evelyn fell asleep almost immediately. She woke up in the night and saw Lisa sitting on her laptop. She even asked, What's wrong, what? Lisa jumped up. What? No, the kid has a fever. Go back to sleep. I'm going to bed too. And the workday began again. Evelyn learned to ignore the pain in her back, learned not to look at her bloody hands. She just worked and counted the days. What was the use of counting them? 5 would be taken away, 2 added for fines. Benjamin showed up from time to time. He seemed to take a special pleasure in humiliating Evelyn, probably because she was a native of the village where the oligarch himself was born and almost grew up. "Evelyn, you don't look so good." Admittedly, when you lived with your husband, you looked much better. But although it's probably much better to live like behind a stone wall, and he chuckled at his own joke, Evelyn was silent. She wanted to slap his fat face, but she knew she couldn't. A week passed, then another. Every night when Lisa opened her laptop, Evelyn looked at her questioningly, but she just shook her head. Evelyn's father was no longer online. The day came when the disgruntled warden gave Lisa her papers. Everyone came out to see her off. Lisa took Evelyn aside. "I'm sorry. I'm probably the reason your dad hasn't been in touch anymore. But you know, to me, it's better than no father at all." "I don't know what you mean." Evelyn looked at Lisa and really didn't understand anything. Lisa sighed. "The day you talked to him, I texted him back, and I told him all about your story, about your debt, about your husband, about everything. And he said he'd help, and then I guess he changed his mind." "Lisa, why?" Lisa shook her head. "Because, is he a father or not? He's never helped you once in his life, and now he can. You may or may not be offended, but I think I did the right thing." Lisa left and Evelyn returned to her room lost. Now, even if her dad does show up online, she won't know about it. Well, then it's not fate. 7 more months ahead, no time to think and dream at all. Just before Christmas, when the main job was over and the new one was just beginning, Evelyn decided to go to the store. She had nowhere to live, of course, but Christmas is Christmas. Even the warden had gone home for the weekend, though no one could believe she had a family at all. At the store, the clerk crossed her arms when she saw Evelyn. "Evelyn, you?" "I'm Kathy. Why are you looking at me like I'm a ghost?" "Well, Evelyn, no offense, but you've aged 20 years. "I know, Kathy, I know. Why don't you sell it to me quick before somebody else does?" "Yeah, sure." Kathy ran around the store, picking up what Evelyn was showing and talking nonstop. "What, do you work for our tycoon?" "I do, but they say he doesn't pay at all, and the people aren't happy. He evicted people from their homes, not the whole village, but only those who couldn't fight back. And he's ruined everything with his construction." Evelyn grinned. It can't be. Remember how they greeted him, almost throwing their hats in the air? Kathy looked at her. "You shouldn't say that, Evelyn. People really thought the village would be revived, but now it feels like he's a landowner and everyone else is a serf." Evelyn was silent. She knew what serfs were like. "Did you hear yours?" Evelyn was on her way out, but stopped. "Yours is playing in town." "Huh. Well, he lost a lot of money. They say he was beaten up for his debts, even hospitalized. And then our people met him. He said he was getting married. An old woman, but rich." Evelyn laughed. "Oh, John, he wants to ride a crooked mare to heaven." The mood lightened a little. Evelyn took the road she had not taken in a long time, so as not to see an empty place instead of her home. But the place was no longer empty. There was a new house, which was made under the old. She stood for a while and went on her way. She didn't even notice how a figure separated from the house and followed her. "Excuse me, could you please tell me how I can find Evelyn?" She stopped. She didn't know this man, and she'd never seen him before. In fact, he was kind of strange and dressed differently and had a fashionable haircut. "I'm Evelyn. Who are you?" "Oh, for some reason I thought it was you." You look just like your mom." He pulled out the exact same picture she had. My heart sank. "Who are you?" "My name is James. I'm your father's executor." Now Evelyn realized what confused her the most. Was this man pronouncing words too correctly, like a speech therapist or a foreigner? Is there somewhere we can talk, but out of sight? "I take it we don't need eyes on us just yet." "Well, if only on the shore, where the kids go in summer, but now there's no one there." They walked to the river. Evelyn shook the snow off the bench and sat down. "What are you doing? The bench is cold." She smiled. "I can't stand. My back really hurts." She pulled her hand out of the mitten, and the man rounded his eyes when he saw her bruised, haggard hands. "Why are you like this?" Evelyn quickly hid her hands in the mittens. "What did you want to talk to me about?" "Is Papa dead?" "Yes. William passed away 2 months ago, but in the hospital, in the presence of a notary, witnesses, he gave clear orders regarding you. We never got a chance to talk, to sit down." Evelyn wiped away a tear. "What orders?" The man sat down beside her and opened the folder. "The orders are very simple. William instructed me to give you everything he had. I suspect you won't agree to go abroad. He sold everything he had there 2 weeks before he died. All the money, all the assets and more are now yours. I, as his advisor and assistant, will stay with you for the first time. I will help you, so that no one will cheat you, so that you will be able to invest the money profitably. As soon as you understand everything, I will be able to leave you. I'm aware of your problem. The first thing I suggest is that you pay off your debt, which will cause a lot of trouble for the person who dumped it on you. The second thing is to get a good night's rest and a good night's sleep, and only then do business." Evelyn stared at him in amazement. "Money so much that it's enough for a debt." The man smiled. "Your money is enough to pay 1,000 such debts." He couldn't stand it, he laughed. "You have such a face now." William was a very wealthy man. His work was insanely valued, but he was far from the richest. "So how do I get in touch with this man?" "Through the warden." James's eyebrows flew upwards. "I'm sorry. I must have misheard you." Evelyn laughed now. "Oh, now you should see your face. Let's go down the road and I'll tell you all about it. Tell me, is English your first language?" "Oh, my grandmother." James told her a whole story about how his grandmother had once fled America, but made her children and grandchildren speak only English at home. By the time Evelyn finished her story, they had reached the wooden structure where Wendy stood with her arms at her sides. "What's up, Queen?" "Another fine." Evelyn wanted to start making excuses, as she usually did, but James stepped forward. "I beg your pardon, who are you?" "Who are you?" "I'm Evelyn's attorney. I'd very much like to speak to the man to whom Evelyn allegedly owes money." Wendy, who hadn't even had a chance to change out of her city clothes yet, reached into her pocket for her phone. "I'll call now, of course." "Lawyer." "Well, that's funny. Please tell Mr. Benjamin to grab his lawyer or notary. Only in the presence of 2 persons we will transfer the debt to him." Wendy already looked at James in amazement and stepped farther away to explain to the owner what was the matter. The girls came out of the outbuilding. They looked at Evelyn with envy. She gave them a hug. "Don't you think I'm not leaving you? James says he will take Benjamin at once, and very soon he will be where he ought to be." The girls sighed, hugged Evelyn, and asked her to come and see them, even if it didn't work out. Benjamin arrived an hour later. In that time, Evelyn and those who worked with her had time to decorate the Christmas tree in the yard. Strangely, Wendy didn't even chase the others away to work. She sat and quietly pondered whether she should run away already or whether she could still work. "Who's so wealthy around here?" James stood up. "Good afternoon. I'm Evelyn's attorney. She'd like to pay you some money. You, in turn, must give a receipt and write that you have no claims against her." "Oh, I can't believe it, Evelyn. Are you a foreigner or something?" "That's right. I was Evelyn's father's attorney and trustee, and now I'm helping Evelyn with what's called an inheritance, and the big inheritance." Benjamin's smile faded a little. He remembered those conversations from his childhood, when adults had said that Evelyn had a father abroad, but no one knew for sure, and it turned out to be true. The inheritance, apparently, is not bad at all, since even from there the man flew. After 2 o'clock, Benjamin, sweating, looked at the departing couple. The man who had come with him said, "Oh, Benjamin, the guy is very competent. He can twist this receipt so that you will not feel bad. If I were you, I'd wrap it up real quick and sit tight." "No way. I was not born to be told what to do by Benjamin." The man shook his head. "Well, that's for you to say. It's my business to warn you. And yes, and I'm sorry, I can't work with you anymore. I don't feel like sitting down for company." He got into his car and drove away quickly. Benjamin turned around and saw the women who worked for him, or rather worked off their debts. "What are you looking at? You can leave, but only temporarily. Whoever wants to can continue working. The salary is twice as much." After 20 minutes, he and Wendy were the only ones left. Wendy took out a travel bag. "You, Benjamin, have calculated me. I'm going too." He looked at her angrily. "Well, you'll get around. You have to work, and you're running away." "Well, I'll get by, I'll get by. I think the journalists in our town would be very interested to hear me." Wendy laughed. She very rarely laughed, and rightly so. Her laughter was like the bleating of a goat. Benjamin threw a wad of money on the table and walked out. James brought Evelyn to the most beautiful hotel in town. "This is your room. Mine is across the hall. You get some rest and sleep, and I'll be there, say 5 o'clock. We'll order dinner, and I'll give you everything. And then we'll figure it out as we go along." "Okay. Thank you very much." She didn't get much sleep. She took a bath, dried her hair, thought about buying some cream. Her hands were sore. Her skin chapped from work. Decided that later, tonight, to rest, but she never got to sleep. In the evening, James handed her a card. "This is your card. It's automatic. You can use it to pay for anything you want. Here's the paperwork. It's new. I haven't activated it yet. This is what you need to read. Here's the patent information. You are now the owner of a brand of healing equipment. When you get up to speed, you'll need to renegotiate with some of the companies that manufacture them." Evelyn looked at him with those eyes. "Don't be afraid of anything. You'll figure it all out, and I'll help you. You have very tired eyes. I suggest we split up and go to bed. And tomorrow, you could go to the barber shop. I don't know. What else do women need to be happy? All the business can wait." "Thank you, James. Can I ask you a question?" "Yes, of course. You're here with me, but I suppose you have a family waiting for you at home?" He froze for a second. "No, my family died. My wife and young son were killed in the mountains. I didn't want to live either. If it weren't for your father, we wouldn't be talking right now. Please forgive me." "It's okay. You didn't know. Good night to you." To be honest, Evelyn was even a little tired of having fun. In the morning, while James was probably asleep, she quietly left the room. Through the night, she slept like she was a carefree infant. She waved for a cab. The car immediately stopped in front of her. "Where are we going?" "Do you know where we have expensive, fashionable clothing stores in the city?" The elderly man smiled. "I know everything." 15 minutes later, he stopped at a magician's shop. "He's so handsome." She paid the cab driver and went inside. A woman immediately approached her. "What are you interested in?" Evelyn looked around and answered with a smile. "Everything." The woman raised an eyebrow, immediately snapped her fingers, and two young girls appeared beside her. "Cindy, lingerie, Kelly, dress and suits, and I'll take care of outerwear." 2 o'clock Evelyn was like being in a fashion show. She tried on so many things. Most she put off to buy. One outfit, a pantsuit paired with a short mink coat, she really liked. The woman who met her suddenly said, "Wait, you can't go outside in those shoes." She quickly dialed someone's number. And already in 10 minutes, Evelyn did not even have time to finish her coffee. A girl with several boxes appeared in the store. "Now we're all set. Do you want your clothes packed? Can you throw them away?" The woman smiled. "With great pleasure. There's a great beauty parlor nearby. The owner is a friend of mine. If you want, I'll call and ask to be taken off the waiting list." "Oh, thank you. I'd love to." The beauty parlor was literally 2 houses down. Next to the entrance to the salon where the grocery store entrance was, Evelyn smiled to herself. A year ago, she would have chosen that entrance. John had been stomping outside the store for an hour now. What kind of person was Miranda? She'd gone to get something nice for dinner and had been at the store for an hour. On the one hand, it's good, because I don't have to listen to her stupid jokes and endure her endless touching. On the other hand, I can't leave. Miranda already bought him a car. It may not be the most expensive, but John's never had one. And she promised that if he behaved well, she'd pay off his debt. It wasn't a huge debt, but John had nowhere to get it, and they could beat his head off for it. So he was on his best behavior, trying to do his best. "John, are you there?" He turned around sharply. Oh, how he hated unexpected meetings with acquaintances, because most of them owed him money. "Kathy?" "Hi." It was just the clerk from the village store. "You didn't come to the city from your village, did you?" "Yeah, I did. I need to pick up a few things." "Yeah, there's nothing in the village." Kathy took a look at the car. "I see you bought a car." John grimaced. "Oh, don't. Evelyn works there, and you're so bad." "It's not my fault Benjamin picked it out." Kathy raised an eyebrow in surprise. "I wasn't going to. And Evelyn's not working. She paid that Benjamin, and she's free to go. In fact, her lawyer made such a mess of it that he shut his company down in a flash." "Kathy, are you confused?" "What's her lawyer?" "Where from?" "Oh, you probably don't know anything." Evelyn's father turned up and died. And he lived abroad. He was a millionaire, even more. So now Evelyn is the heiress to the whole fortune. "You're lying." "I didn't think so. The women who worked there told me that her lawyer said she'd put everyone in jail and buy them all." Kathy was pleased with the effect it had. Of course, no Broads had said anything, but let the creep know. Kathy went about her business, and John wondered, what does that mean? His wife is like a cheese and butter, and he has to live with an old woman to get by on a trifle. It's not right. What we need to do is this. We've got to get back to Evelyn. John's mind was already churning with the most fantastic ideas. He turned around and became numb. A cab that had stopped nearby was being driven by a woman. Or rather, it wasn't a woman, it was a queen. Expensive fur coat, hairdo, high-heeled boots. John rubbed his eyes. No, there could be no mistake. It was Evelyn. While he was thinking, the cab drove off, taking his wife with it. "Oh, you weren't lying, Kathy." Before he could think, A shrill voice came from across the street. "John! John, why are you standing there like a statue? Or do you think I'm going to carry the bags myself to feed you?" John jerked and turned around. His Miranda was standing on the front porch of the store. Fat, 15 years older than him, wealthy, as he now realized, very relatively, wealthy Miranda. "What are you looking at? Get the bags." John saw how passers-by paid attention to them, how they smiled. He moved towards Miranda, walked over, pulled out his car keys and threw them at her. "Fuck you. Find yourself another asshole." "What? You've got some nerve. You won't get a dime. You can get your ass cut off in the back alley for dead." But John was already striding down the street, thinking how he could find out where Evelyn was. Certainly not in the village. She's got nowhere to live. Oh, I should have asked Kathy more. John had to go to the village. He even had to spend the night at a neighbor's house. But in 3 days he had gathered all the information he needed. The only thing left was to borrow money for flowers. He couldn't go to his wife empty-handed, could he? Evelyn studied the papers. For the past hour, she had been familiarizing herself with the techniques that helped people get back on their feet. It was confusing at first, then interesting, and by the end of the reading, she was sure it was a real miracle. She had even read many testimonials when even those who were considered hopeless started walking. I mean, it's so necessary, but I understand it's all just overseas. Yes, there is something like that here, but only in the capital. Evelyn thought for a moment. James, correct me if I'm wrong, if such a hospital is located in nature, but for example, in our village, it would be more useful, wouldn't it? The man smiled faintly. What can I say? Well done. Immediately grasped the essence, all thought out. Of course, you see, without walks, sunbaths, and all that, the treatment is much longer. It's a pity Benjamin took our village. We have such nature there. You know, Evelyn, you and I are alike after all. I really liked it there too. Everything is so real, so natural, isn't it? And Benjamin, perhaps it's time to take care of him. You know, to free the village from his yoke. Is that possible? Nothing is impossible in this world, especially if you have money. By the way, I looked at the location of the houses. It would make a great hospital, where the strongest of the world can improve their health. And that's money, and that's a lot of money, and that's jobs. James, if we do it, we'll be the biggest smarties of all. He smiled. After Evelyn had returned from her girls' camping trip, he had not recognized her at first. When he did, he was confused. She couldn't have been that beautiful. When he realized she could have been, he finally died. Now the most important thing was not to show her how he felt about her, because it would turn out that he had come along with the money to the Harris. They discussed some details, and James went to his room. The phone rang. "Evelyn, there's a man here asking for you. He's dying to see you." "Who?" "It's your husband." "My what?" "My husband. I'll be right down. You can't let him in here." She left the room and ran into James. "Evelyn, your face is gone." "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." And she walked briskly toward the elevator. James stood for a moment and followed. What's going on? He's supposed to be guarding her. He immediately recognized the man who tried to hug Evelyn. She'd pushed his arms away. "John, what do you want? How dare you show your face to me?" "Evelyn, I'm your husband. This is a temporary thing. I've already filed for an annulment." "What annulment? I'll show you." The sound of breaking glass rang in John's head. No, he won't give up his dream. Evelyn is his wife. When he dresses up, he'll look cool too. He won't invent something so simple. He'll invent something worthwhile because they have money. Evelyn, you just don't realize what the future holds. What future? Do you want me to tell you? I don't. And don't even come near me. You're nothing but trouble, John. Learn to live on your own. I don't get it. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm dead serious. John grinned wickedly. You mean you need John to get you out of the mud, but you don't need John to get you out of the money? I repaid you handsomely. In case you haven't forgotten, I've been working off your debt. You gave me away just like a thing so that I could earn money for your entertainment. John couldn't take it anymore. You shouldn't have done that. I was getting ready. I bought flowers. Who needs you like that? You can't even have children. You're an inferior. Evelyn looked at him. If anyone in this life is incomplete, it's you. John didn't realize how it happened. It was just so painful to realize that nothing would change, that he would not be able to live a beautiful and rich life. And he already had so many images in his head. He hit Evelyn and swung again. All the hurt and pain was in his fist. John wanted to cry, and she was to blame for everything. It didn't work the second time. Some man kicked him so hard that John bent down and gulped for a long time. Hotel staff rushed to them, and someone called the police. 2 weeks later, Evelyn and James arrived in the village. Benjamin had been taken into custody by people who were competent in the matter. He was in more trouble than you could count. Nancy had not left the house at all. Benjamin owed wages to the whole village. Evelyn knew perfectly well that she had to talk to the people. Rumors were circulating, but people didn't know what was what, and that was why they were so gloomy. The village people, who had always preferred stability and dimensionality, were very frightened when a large crowd gathered near their car. Evelyn spoke up. The only thing left was to borrow money for flowers. He couldn't go to his wife empty-handed, could he? Evelyn studied the papers. For the past hour, she had been familiarizing herself with the techniques that helped people get back on their feet. It was confusing at first, then interesting, and by the end of the reading, she was sure it was a real miracle. She had even read many testimonials when even those who were considered hopeless started walking. I mean, it's so necessary, but I understand it's all just overseas. Yes, there is something like that here, but only in the capital. Evelyn thought for a moment. James, correct me if I'm wrong, if such a hospital is located in nature, but, for example, in our village, it would be more useful, wouldn't it? The man smiled faintly. What can I say? Well done. Immediately grasped the essence, all thought out. Of course. You see, without walks, sunbaths, and all that, the treatment is much longer. It's a pity Benjamin took our village. We have such nature there. You know, Evelyn, you and I are alike after all. I really liked it there too. Everything is so real, so natural, isn't it? And Benjamin, perhaps it's time to take care of him. You know, to free the village from his yoke. Is that possible? Nothing is impossible in this world, especially if you have money. By the way, I looked at the location of the houses. It would make a great hospital, where the strongest of the world can improve their health. And that's money, and that's a lot of money, and that's jobs. James, if we do it, we'll be the biggest smarties of all. He smiled. After Evelyn had returned from her girls' camping trip, he had not recognized her at first. When he did, he was confused. She couldn't have been that beautiful. When he realized she could have been, he finally died. Now, the most important thing was not to show her how he felt about her, because it would turn out that he had come along with the money to the heiress. They discussed some details, and James went to his room. The phone rang. Evelyn, there's a man here asking for you. He's dying to see you. Who? It's your husband. My what? My husband. I'll be right down. You can't let him in here. She left the room and ran into James. "Evelyn, your face is gone." "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." And she walked briskly toward the elevator. James stood for a moment and followed. What's going on? He's supposed to be guarding her. He immediately recognized the man who tried to hug Evelyn. She pushed his arms away. "John, what do you want? How dare you show your face to me?" "Evelyn, I'm your husband. This is a temporary thing. I've already filed for an annulment." "What annulment? I'll show you." The sound of breaking glass rang in John's head. No, he won't give up his dream. Evelyn is his wife. When he dresses up, he'll look cool too. He won't invent something so simple. He'll invent something worthwhile because they have money. Evelyn, you just don't realize what the future holds. What future? Do you want me to tell you? I don't. And don't even come near me. You're nothing but trouble, John. Learn to live on your own. I don't get it. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm dead serious. John grinned wickedly. You mean you need John to get you out of the mud, but you don't need John to get you out of the money? I repaid you handsomely. In case you haven't forgotten, I've been working off your debt. You gave me away just like a thing so that I could earn money for your entertainment. John couldn't take it anymore. You shouldn't have done that. I was getting ready. I bought flowers. Who needs you like that? You can't even have children. You're an inferior. Evelyn looked at him. If anyone in this life is incomplete, it's you. John didn't realize how it happened. It was just so painful to realize that nothing would change, that he would not be able to live a beautiful and rich life. And he already had so many images in his head. He hit Evelyn and swung again. All the hurt and pain was in his fist. John wanted to cry, and she was to blame for everything. It didn't work the second time. Some man kicked him so hard that John bent down and gulped for a long time. Hotel staff rushed to them, and someone called the police. 2 weeks later, Evelyn and James arrived in the village. Benjamin had been taken into custody by people who were competent in the matter. He was in more trouble than you could count. Nancy had not left the house at all. Benjamin owed wages to the whole village. Evelyn knew perfectly well that she had to talk to the people. Rumors were circulating, but people didn't know what was what, and that was why they were so gloomy. The village people, who had always preferred stability and dimensionality, were very frightened when a large crowd gathered near their car. Evelyn spoke up. You all have known me since I was a little girl. I've never slacked off, never did a bad thing. And most importantly, I loved our village. I'll answer the most important questions right away. Yes, I received an inheritance. Yes, I bought back from Benjamin everything he had bought here. The crowd erupted in amazement. Wow, so now you're going to put up a factory too? Evelyn smiled. No, I wanted to consult with you. The people waited tensely. She handed out little books to everyone about the technique for the sick and told them at the same time. We can save all the nature, make a name for ourselves, make a lot of jobs. If you all say no, nothing will happen. I promise you. There was no arguing. Grandfather Mason, who was the oldest in the village, came out to the people and said, I think we can trust Evelyn. If it's true, our village will be famous all over the world. When we got back to town, we decided that we should celebrate the beginning of a successful business. James was a little too gloomy. What's the matter with you? You don't seem happy about our success. Of course I am. Except I realized one thing today. You don't need me anymore. You can do this on your own. I can leave. When we got back, I booked a ticket, leaving in the morning. Evelyn realized it was bound to happen sooner or later. But why now? Why not later someday? She could see she liked him. She couldn't let him go. James? Yes. James, could you reschedule the flight? Reschedule? Do you still need me here? Yes, I do. He shrugged. Well, he would suffer for her a little longer. It was unbearable to be around the person he was about to lose. All right, what time do you want to reschedule the flight? He picked up the phone. In the next flight. In this one, I'm not letting you go. James slowly raised his eyes to her, looked at her for a long time, then said, And I don't want you to think I stayed for the money. I don't, but everyone will think so. Do you care what everyone else thinks? James smiled. Evelyn, you're just scared. You don't love me, do you? Do you? And then he blushed. And I do, but... Then I'll drop everything and come with you. In a second, Evelyn was in James's arms. He kissed her and repeated, I've had one desire lately, to kiss you. Now for the rest of your life you'll have to put up with me around you. And I agree. Evelyn laughed happily.